Good morning, everybody. Today is December 23rd of 2023, and today's topic is going to be wine because obviously we're in the holiday season now and everyone's going to be, well, not everyone, but a lot of people are going to be hosting guests or celebrating or maybe even spending time by themselves at home or whatever. But during these days, I assume that the consumption of alcoholic beverages goes up. So given that that's the case, we might as well talk about it at least a little bit from a healthy social standpoint and maybe make a little more sense out of it. So I am going to talk about wines right now. And so let's just get into it. I might talk about whiskey as well, but let's at least talk about wine. So I've purchased a few bottles of wine lately. I'm going to show you those bottles. And I've also seen people buying wine at the same time I am. Excuse me for the runny nose. And my assumption based on their body language is that some of them are just picking one or the other, but not really knowing what they're picking. And the same thing is perhaps even more true with whiskey. For me, and this is just my preference and my style, people can do whatever they want. You can buy what you want. You can drink what you want. If you like Bud Light and Diet Pepsi, go for it. If you want to know a little bit more about wine and whiskey, then this is the video for you. So I guess that means I'm committed to talking about whiskey. So I guess maybe I'll start by talking about whiskey, even though I was going to talk about wine. I'm going to try to resist talking about whiskey right now. I'll try to save that for a different video, even though it'll be a really short video. But anyway, let's get back and talk about wine. So I learned something from John Cleese, the UK actor and intellectual, semi-intellectual at least. Maybe he's more than semi, but he's at least somewhat intellectual. Even though he's an actor and comedian, I learned something from him when I was first learning about wines maybe 12 years ago. And that is something that I now interpret and call the law of wine, because I think this is the most important rule about wine. And that is, John Cleese said, he said, a good wine is a wine that you like and that you're willing to pay for. So it really doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. Now, obviously, right now I'm going to get into a few more details, but ultimately it's whatever you like and whatever you want to pay for. So I'm not going to talk about any wines that are expensive because I don't think paying more for wine gives you a better wine. And anybody who knows wine would agree with me. You can spend $40 or 20. You can spend $20 and get a good bottle of wine. You can spend $40 and maybe get something a little better. But beyond $40, I'm talking about retail prices, not restaurant prices. For retail, by the time you get beyond $40, you either know what you're doing or you're doing it for a specific reason, or you don't know what you're doing and you're just blowing money. Some of the best wines I've ever had were about $20 to $40. And I don't see any need to pay more than that. I have purchased bottles of wine with friends or for special occasions, and I've paid $250, closer to $300. I think the most I ever paid for one bottle of wine was around, believe it or not, it was for, I was celebrating a specific event with a specific friend, and I think I paid $400 for a bottle of wine one time. But that was just a one of, and I hope that I never do that again. But I did do it with that friend on that occasion for a specific reason. And it wasn't necessarily even any better, I would have been better off with one of these wines. One of which you could buy in a grocery store next to a gas station. So let me just show you. I'll start with what I consider a good baseline wine, and then I'll work up from there. So I'm just going to look at these bottles. So what would be a good baseline wine? Well, I guess this would be a good baseline. I'll go with this one. This would be a good baseline wine. So this is from a company, a vineyard called Baronia out of Spain. And this would be a good place to start. This happens to be organic. So this is a 2020. So let me back up just a little bit. So what is wine and why do people care about wine? Wine is obviously made from grape juice, fermented grape juice. But wine is different from, just drinking grape juice or lemonade or whatever. If you think of beer or lemonade or fruit juice, basically you're just tasting one or two flavors within that beverage. Coffee is obviously much more complex than grape juice or whatever. But wine, and whiskey as well, wine is famous for being a complex beverage, or the flavor structure is very complex. And that's why people like wine. You don't have to be into it. You don't have to be into it right now. You might be into it later. When I first started drinking wine when I was in my 30s, I didn't know anything about wine, and they all tasted the same. All I knew is I liked red wine. I didn't like white wine, but for me, they were all the same. So everybody starts that way, pretty much. But over time, you might find that you're inclined towards one grape variety or varietal over another or whatever. So like in my case, for example, for whatever reason, I've always been kind of drawn to Cabernet Sauvignon. It's a type of grape, even though sometimes I wonder why I even care about it. A lot of times I drink them and I don't really like them. So maybe I need to give up on that. Maybe it's what I started with when I was first drinking wine or something. Maybe it was the first grape I ever knew. But this is a Cabernet that I purchased recently. You can see it says Cabernet on the bottle. It says Reserve. So this should be good, right? I should like this wine. If this is a Cabernet Reserve, I should like this. So what I now know is that this is a horrible bottle of wine. And the reason that this is a horrible bottle of wine is now quite obvious, and I'll show you why that is the case in just a moment, and it'll be obvious to you. But anyway, let's get back to this baseline wine. So again, you can pick a wine based on the type of grape. That's a Cabernet. This is a Tempranillo. Most wines from Spain are going to be Tempranillo, even though, of course, you can find exceptions. And you can find blends. But the either official or semi-official grape of Spain is Tempranillo. And it's a good, basic, strong... I used to think of it as somewhat peppery. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but that's how it occurred to me at first, when I was first kind of learning about Spain and Spanish wines. But it's not, for example, famously sweet. It's not a sweet wine. It's just a good, strong, normal wine. So you can pick a wine based on the type of grape, based on the region, the soil, the climate, the country. All of that influences the type of grape. So, theoretically, if you were to drink a Cabernet from Oregon or Washington, it would taste different from a Cabernet from France or, in this case, Chile. So some people like particular grapes, some people like particular countries or even regions. And believe it or not, like some people in Spain, Spanish people drink a lot of wine. I mean, it's just part of the culture and part of their history. But sometimes they'll even talk about which side of the mountain or what plants were growing next to the grapes that might influence the flavor. I mean, some people really get into details. And maybe those people have, really developed or sensitive taste receptors. And maybe they pick up on things that the rest of us don't. Or maybe some of us, like me, I kind of program myself to not care about some things. And at a certain level, I just don't care anymore. And I don't want to care about that level of detail about wine. I just don't care. But for people, who really love wine and know the region, they actually talk about, what side of the mountain on a certain region, and that would influence the flavor of the grape based on how much sunlight it gets or how much weather, if it's a microclimate or whatever. So anyway, those are some of the variations on the theme of wine. First, starting with what type of grape, then starting with what country, what region, what climate, what microclimate, what's flowering next to it, the year, and then, of course, the age and the processing of the wine. So the way I think about wine at 4 different levels of age. Typically, more age costs more because they had to store it for a longer period of time, but it also tastes better. So as wine is developing or maturing over time, when we're talking about somewhere between 0 and 5 years, typically, some of that time, if it's a good wine, will be spent in oak barrels. And so the wine, the grape juice that's fermenting, receives flavors from the oak, just like whiskey. And that influences very much the flavor of the wine. So I like oaky wine. If it's a young wine, it's not going to be very oaky. It still might be okay, but it's not going to be really complex. And again, the reason that people drink wine and they appreciate wine and they take classes to learn how to drink wine and appreciate it is because of the complexity of the aromas and the flavors and all that. And that's also why people drink wine out of glasses that are shaped as such. So it typically has a big body and a narrower neck. I'm not saying this is the perfect wine glass. It just happens to be what I had nearby. But the idea of a wine glass shaped as such with a fat body and a narrow neck is that you want to trap the smells, odors, aroma of the wine within the glass. And so theoretically, if you want to go, depends on how far you want to go with this whole thing, but if you were to take a class on drinking wine, which I never have, but I've seen a few videos, what they recommend is that as you're drinking the wine, you're actually inhaling at the same time and you're breathing in the aroma of the wine. That's why these glasses are shaped to kind of trap the aroma of the wine. So you would drink it and inhale at the same time, and that would give you more kind of an olfactory sensation. So that's why wine glasses look like that. And so what else? Let me get back to this bottle. I'll just go through the bottles I have here. So Baronia is a really, in my experience, it's a good brand from Spain. It's from the Rioja region, which is arguably, or perhaps not even arguably, but it is probably the most famous region in Spain for wine. If you're driving from Catalonia and Barcelona and Tarragona, where I used to live, if you're driving north from that region toward Basque country and San Sebastian, Bilbao, then after you've been in the car for maybe 3 or 4 hours, you're going to pass by the Rioja region. So it's not quite the northern coast of Spain, but it's certainly on the northern side of Spain, north of the Catalonia region and Valencia. We used to drive by it all the time, and some of these vineyards we used to drive by. So I'll show you a wine in just a moment. We used to drive by that vineyard just traveling between San Sebastian and Barcelona, and one vineyard was on the right-hand side, the other one's on the left-hand side, depending on if you're going north or south, of course. But this would be, you could expect that this would be a good wine. It's organic, it's from Spain, it's Rioja, and it's a Tempranillo. So, if you're starting from zero and you're going to have guests at your house and you have to buy a wine, if you start with a Spanish Rioja wine, even if it's a basic table wine like this, it's probably going to be at least acceptable. I would expect that this wine is probably going to be reasonably good. So that would be a good starting place. Again, if you start with a Spanish Rioja wine, you're probably going to be okay, and then you can do better from there. So better from there would be the same brand. So this is a Baronia, but this is a Crianza. It's also from Rioja, and obviously it's a Tempranillo. So Crianza So you'll notice that the other bottle didn't say anything. It didn't say like how many years or whatever. It had the date on it, but it didn't say what class of wine it was per se. This is a crianza, which means it's been stored and matured for at least 2 years. So this is a young wine, but it'll be a little bit better and more complex than the other one. Even though I had a slight preference for the other one because it's organic. I guess I'll just do these in order of what I think would be quality. Here's another bottle of wine. So now we're getting to the next level. So this is a vineyard called Marquet or Marquez. I would typically say Marquet, even though the exact, that would be more like the French pronunciation as far as I know. The Spanish pronunciation would be Marquez. And the name of this vineyard is Riscal. I don't really like that name, but that's what it is. And you'll notice, you can see this, you can find this on the international market pretty easily. And you'll notice that they put like this wire mesh around the bottle. They are the only company that does that. So if you're running into the store and you're just going to grab a bottle and go, you could look for this mesh and you'd be okay. This is a Rioja. So it's from the Rioja region of Spain. This is a reserve. It says Reserva right there. It gives you the year. So reserve, to qualify as a reserve wine, it has to be aged for at least 3 years. So remember the other one, the Crianza I showed you was 2 years. This is a reserve for 3 years. Excuse me. I've purchased wine from this vineyard, and the first wine I ever had from this vineyard I thought was horrible. Maybe it wasn't a reserve. I bought it in the United States. It may have just been a table wine, and maybe it just didn't taste good, or maybe I didn't know any better, or maybe whatever. But I didn't have a good impression of this vineyard. But this bottle of wine was actually quite good. Again, it's a Rioja Reserve. If you get a Rioja Reserve, it's probably going to be good. You really can't go wrong, in my opinion, with a Rioja Reserve. This is one of my all-time favorite wines. This is actually one of the first wines I ever drank when I was starting to relocate to Spain. Again, you could say Marquet. I'm guessing that might be more close to the French pronunciation, even though, strictly speaking, from a Spanish language perspective, this would be Marquez or Marquez. Marquez de Murrieta, Marquet de Murrieta. It's a reserve. Looks like 2018 in the mirror there. And it's from Rioja. And this is a damn good wine. One of my favorites. First time I ever drank this. And the setting definitely influences the experience of wine. But the first time I ever drank this wine was in a restaurant called Agua, right on the beach at Barcelona, a little neighborhood called Barceloneta. And that was my first experience of this wine. And I still remember it, obviously. And that was 2013. Yeah, so here it is 10 years later, and I still remember the first time I ever drank this wine. So, good wine. I think it's a mix, yeah. So it's 86% Tempranillo, 8% Grisanio, 4% Mazuelo, so those are the different types of grapes, and 2% Garnacha. Garnacha, yeah, which happens to be a grape that I like. My favorite grapes, other than Tempranillo, which is good, but it's not like special. Again, for some reason, and maybe it was just like my first experience, I've always liked Cabernet. But my definite all-time favorite is Italian Primitivo wine. So Primitivo wine from Italy comes from a small region in southern Italy, and they're called Primitivos, a really strong, robust grape. I love it. In the United States, it's called Zinfandel, and I don't know if it has the same flavor and the same tonality based on the difference in the climate, etc. But definitely one of the best wine experiences I ever had was actually in Rome, drinking a Primitivo with some friends at a conference that we did there. So again, Marquet de Murrieta, if you're driving from Barcelona to San Sebastian in the Basque country in Spain, if you're driving from south to north, it'll be on the right-hand side of the road. And on the left-hand side of the road will be this one called Muga. Again, this is a Rioja Reserve. If you run into the store and you grab this off the shelf, you can be confident that it's going to be good because it's a Rioja Reserve. You could buy a Grand Reserve. That means it's been aged for 5 years. But that might be more than you need for most occasions, unless you're celebrating like something, a little more special. So I don't have any political plus or minus with any country. I lived in Spain, but I'm not fascinated with Spain anymore. I was for a while until I lived there. I do have sympathy for the people of Chile because of the fact that the UK and the United States overthrew their democratically elected government for business reasons back in 1971, and that resulted in the murder and torture of hundreds of thousands of people in Chile at the hands of a dictatorship that was placed by the UK and the United States. So I have sympathy for Chile, but I don't have sympathy for their wine. So this is a reserve Cabernet from Chile. This should be a good wine, but to me it tasted like fermented grape juice, like that was somebody left a bottle of grape juice in the car over the weekend and then they drink it. Not that I've ever done that, but I'm just making that up. So this wine for me was horrible. And I've had this experience twice now with a Chilean Reserve Cabernet. So why is this wine nowhere near as good as this Crianza from Spain? At least for me. Maybe you like it and you can go back to the John Cleese law of wine and, the best wine is whatever you like and you're willing to pay for. For me, this young 2-year-old Crianza is better than this Reserve from Chile. So why would that be? And that's because in Chile, their definition of a reserve is only 6 months old. So that's why to the extent possible, I will never purchase another bottle of Chilean wine because they're not complex, they don't have good flavor. Again, this is a Chilean reserve, but in most countries, a reserve wine means at least 3 years. But for some reason in Chile, maybe just to sell more wine and produce it faster, etc., they call a reserve 6 months, and that's for me. That's just a ripoff. I've had that experience twice now. I don't want to have it again with Chilean wine. So that's almost all I have to talk about. Except you have to know how to open the bottle. So let's see. So let's look at this one. Oh yeah, I guess I didn't talk about this one. So I bought this one just the other day. Protos. This is a kind of an edgy brand, I guess I might say. It's kind of on the edge between being good or being bad in Spain. So let's see, what does the bottle say? So this is a organic, ecological wine. It's a Tempranillo. It has the European Union organic leaf on it. So it's organic wine, that's why I bought it. What else? Oh, the region? Ribera del Duero. So this is not a Rioja wine. So this is also kind of, the northern aspect of Spain, but it's between the Basque Country and Galicia, right around this beautiful medieval city called Burgos, right around that region. So again, actually exactly between kind of Navarra, Rioja region. If you're on the highway, you could stop for coffee at a city called Logroño, which is right next to Pamplona or pretty close to Pamplona. But then if you were to continue west, you would eventually pass by Burgos, which is a beautiful city with a medieval wall that has statues in it. And around that region is where this wine comes from. And then you would go another 3 hours or 4 hours to get to Galicia. depending on where you're going. So I expect that this will be good. I don't expect it to be great. But, for an organic wine, hopefully it'll be okay. So aged 9 months in barrels of oak from France and the United States. So I hope that this is good. You'll notice that it doesn't say Crianza. So I would call this a table wine. So again, the way that I think about it, if they don't tell you how old it is